Hearing this, Kevin threw a punch back. The scene shifted. The two went back to the police. Even the police were bewildered. Meanwhile, Chris woke up at Kevin's house. David explained that he carried you home last night when you were drunk. At that moment, Mr. Choi found Daisy. He told Daisy, if you don't pay up again, your son won't be able to play anymore. Tell Daisy to prepare the money soon. So, Daisy planned to meet all the basketball parents. She was set to report Mr. Choi, but parents feared trouble. No one wanted to speak up. After David found out, he used Kevin's phone to message the parents. He scheduled a meeting in the gym and told them. Soon, a crowd gathered in the gym. Kevin informed them that Mr. Choi in high school, I saw Dad give cash to the coach. That's why he takes bribes from parents now. Chris' dad stood up and said, if they revealed the truth, everyone will be punished, and their kids will also be disqualified from the competition. This is what Daisy said. Though we can't be great parents, at least we shouldn't make our kids feel ashamed. This made Chris' dad recall what Chris said. I feel embarrassed because of you, Dad. Then, Daisy continued to say, Mr. Choi illegally ran a bar. We can quickly take down Mr. Choi through the bar. So, Daisy collected evidence against Mr. Choi. Meanwhile, Irene brought the police to the bar. Mr. Choi saw the scene. He quickly left from the back. At this moment, Daisy texted him to meet at the gym. When he arrived at the gym, he found only Daisy. Daisy told him, your illegal bar operation has been exposed and your bribery has also been discovered. Then parents came out from behind. Seeing that his scheme was exposed, he stepped forward to take action against Daisy, but Daisy took him down in one shot. This left everyone stunned. Just then, Irene walked in with the police. That's how it went. Helen was seized by the cops and his bar was shut down. The other side, when the principal found out, he chose a new coach. When the meeting wrapped up, Helen approached David. She first expressed her gratitude.
You look sharp today.
Do you think I look good?
I know we can resolve this issue. You worked really hard. See you next time.
At that point, David called her. Then he walked seriously toward Helen, but he got bumped into along the way. The good atmosphere was lost instantly. Then he invited Helen for coffee. Helen smiled and agreed. During class, the teacher asked if anyone wanted to exhibit photos. All I can do is watch them leave. Blame the pig teammate up front. That day, Sophie accidentally hit her head while organizing books. Justin and David hurried over to check. David worried about touching his daughter, but Justin stopped him. Justin said, you can't touch her. David curiously asked why he couldn't touch her. Justin thought for a moment and said, your hands are too dirty. David looked and agreed. Then, Sophie went out with another female classmate. At that moment, David asked Justin if he liked Sophie. Justin replied, mind your own business. David could easily tell that Justin liked Sophie. He felt quite joyful because Justin grew up under his watch, but thinking he might take his daughter away, David's face flipped fast. Men are all trouble. At this point, Chris entered. He warned David to stay away from Sophie. At night, Sophie was at the convenience store. Justin walked in. He looked to speak to Sophie, but before he could speak, Chris came over too. Then, Chris grabbed 2 cans of drinks. After paying, he gave a can to Sophie. Sophie asked why he gave it to her. Chris said it's buy one get one. Sophie stayed quiet. This really annoyed Chris. Just then, David, concerned for his daughter, arrived at the convenience store. The scene shifts. The 3 stood by the store. David asked why they weren't leaving. Chris said you haven't left either. David said he was waiting for Sophie. He planned to take her home. Sophie came out from work. Sophie asked why they hadn't left yet. David said her dad asked him for a favor. Let's talk while we walk. And so, Sophie followed David as they left. The 2 stood in place. In the end, they could only head home. On the way, David asked Sophie if she liked Justin or Chris. Sophie replied that she liked neither. Justin was just a childhood friend, and Chris always bullied his brother. Then they reached an intersection. Sophie steps into the hallway. It looks quite eerie. Next, David attaches an alarm to Sophie's backpack. After seeing all Sophie, David turns to leave. What he doesn't know is that he has already been targeted. They meticulously track David's daily movements on their computer. Even the timing is exact to the second. The next day, Daisy gets to the office. A man takes her to an office. The 3 people inside join the company at the same time as Daisy. The man says he has received news. Of the 4, only 3 can be staffed. The one left out means being fired. Daisy says she will ask her for details, but Grace nearby is visibly displeased. She stands up and leaves the office. The man then says that the 3 of them each have their own shows. If Daisy can't secure a show, it means she will be fired. At work, a producer suddenly approaches Daisy. He wants her to host a show about divorce. To avoid getting fired, Daisy had to agree. Then, Daisy told Irene about this matter because Irene knew David's identity, so she informed David about it. But David did not oppose it. Then, David went to the store for Sophie, only to find Sophie was off. Meanwhile, Sophie had returned to the road from yesterday, but she still walked into the alley. Seeing this, Sophie turned and ran. The man quickly pursued her. Soon, Sophie was caught by the man. Just then, Sophie stepped on his foot and swiftly countered. With 2 moves, she took him down. He never expected the girl to be so tough. "How dare you challenge me?" Turns out, long ago, her mother had trained Sophie in self-defense. Who knew her daughter was a martial arts prodigy? The coach only did a simple demonstration once. Sophie mastered all the moves effortlessly. The man pulled out 7 blades. Sophie saw this. She recalled the coach's words. At that moment, she saw the alarm that David had given her, so she pressed the alarm and turned to run. She was about to be caught by Sui too. Just then, David appeared and kicked Sui too. Soon, David took his student to the station. Daisy heard what happened and rushed to the precinct. She asked if her daughter was hurt. At that moment, David was set to teach Sui too. The police quickly intervened. David asked why there were no cameras on that road, but Sui too arrogantly laughed. He claimed that David had attacked him first. He planned to sue David. Just then, Daisy slapped the man's head. Then she angrily grabbed the man's collar. Sophie's grandma showed up too. Then, the grandmother grabbed the man's hair. Then, she hurled punches at him. The scene was in chaos. After the cops looked into it, they found he had a record of similar offenses. He aimed to harm Sophie. He planned it for an entire month. He followed Sophie in secret all along. He investigated everyone around Sophie. His walls were covered with Sophie's photos. When the police saw this evidence, they quietly covered the camera with a broom. After he left the station, Grandma thanked David. But David's next words stunned everyone. "Don't say that, mother-in-law."
Mother-in-law? I know you like Sophie. I am your mother-in-law.
David has a deep paternal love for Sophie. The two unsuspecting eyes. It appeared to be a young romance. The next day was the school celebration. When Sophie emerged in a beautiful dress, a few boys were mesmerized. David remarked she looked just like her mother. At that point, Sophie took her phone out to snap a pic. Seeing this, David rushed over to help. Beside them, Justin and Chris witnessed the scene. They shot David a glare. Then, David sent the photo he just took to Daisy. He wanted Daisy to see how their daughter looked at school. But Daisy simply replied, "I know." At the party, David watched the singer on stage. He recalled 18 years back, in the same place, listening to the same person sing the same song. He and Daisy had just started dating. Then he turned and left. He will find Daisy. He plans to tell her who he is. But when he saw Daisy, he found Daisy with Ethan. David left feeling dejected after seeing this. Actually, Daisy just ran into Ethan by chance. On the flip side, after David left, Chris confessed his feelings for Sophie in class. This happened 2 days ago. Chris said he'd confessed to Sophie and asked David for advice. Seeing Chris confess to his daughter, David rushed to find a way to stop it. Then he remembered something Sophie said, that she disliked when boys confessed publicly. So David deliberately told Chris Sophie liked when boys confessed publicly. And Chris actually did it, and he succeeded. David arrived at the court. What plans he had for his date with Sophie? If they would hold hands or kiss. Seeing Chris' smug expression, David instantly felt angry. Soon after, David followed his daughter to the date location. He thought the baseball field would be crowded. Chris wouldn't do anything too outrageous. He turned to leave. But when he turned, he saw an image on the billboard. He imagined Chris kissing his daughter. David hurriedly rushed in. He went straight to Sophie and sat down. At that moment, Justin approached with drinks. Seeing Justin, David was startled. He asked Sophie, "Aren't you here with Chris for the game?" Turns out, after yesterday's date, Sophie, so Chris wouldn't be embarrassed, privately returned the flowers to Chris. Justin happened to see this. So, the next day, Justin bought 2 baseball tickets. He asked Sophie to the game. Seeing that Sophie rejected Chris' confession, David felt relieved. Meanwhile, Chris was alone and heartbroken. Michael had dressed up as a clown.